So, Ian McGregor signed on for this show. This is big. It's big. We better get right on making this story amazing. We can't waste it. We need a good villain. We need a good story. No. Nope, we're just gonna have mini Leia. It's gonna be adorable and sassy, and people are gonna eat it up. We'll have like a buddy cop adventure. But wait, don't we actually have kind of specific marks to hit about Leia's and Obi-Wan Kenobi's relationship in episode 4? And then we're gonna have him and Darth Vader duel. Yes! Wait, in episode 4, doesn't Darth Vader say that whole thing? The last time we met, you were my master and I was... but tight storytelling. We'll get Liam Neeson! The definition of fan service has been adopted and changed from its original form. The term originally comes from the Japanese anime and manga communities, where they generally used fan service to mean something that was specifically put in for the fans to please the fans. The biggest difference being that it usually meant something more raunchy in nature, like sexual content or nudity. Today in fandoms, it's mostly been expanded to mean giving the fans what they want, or as I interpret it, giving the fans what they think they want, or being overly influenced by fan forums to actually write outcomes in the original media. Or it might also refer to small moments in media where something is referenced that is intentionally put in to please fans, maybe fans of an older generation of the work or something else within the same universe. And although I have been bothered and have wanted to talk about fan service for a long time, I was finally pushed over the edge while watching the new Disney Plus show Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, before we dig in, I have to admit that there are small moments of fan service, such as maybe when a character shows up in a small way that is connected through all the universes, such as what happens in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, or in Joe Abercrombie's First Law universe, or even in The Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, or maybe an adaptation of a comic book where a specific scene in the movie calls back to a specific panel that only fans of the comics would know. These can admittedly be successful forms of fan service in my opinion, but they all have something in common. First, they are all extremely small and short moments, and importantly, if you don't understand them, it will not matter at all for the story at large. And perhaps the most important one of all, the writers do not rely on these fan service moments to make the piece or work of art good. None of these can be said about the Kenobi show. A trend I've noticed since Disney took over the Star Wars franchise is that it seems that they think every moment and every property that they put out has to be connected with a character or a location or a moment to the original trilogy. Everything needs to be over-explained or over-connected. And while I don't have any proof for this, it feels like the writers are saying, oh, people will only enjoy this if they recognize a name. And of course, there is the more cynical reason for this, is that it also could just be laziness. Of course, I was excited about the Kenobi show. I have been obsessed with Ian McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi since the first movie came out, and I know many of you shared my obsession. Obi-Wan was one of my favorite characters. I watched The Phantom Menace more times than I'm gonna care to admit. I was 10, give me a break. And I read a whole entire book series just focused on Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's relationship. I loved it. Now, in the back of my mind, I recognized that the very concept of this show was the definition of fan service, right? But I just thought they can do it. They can use this fan service opportunity to make something great. It doesn't have to go the way of Solo, but alas, they went hard. Literally everything in Kenobi feels like fan service. Young, little, sassy Leia. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader fighting again. Qui-Gon Jinn Force Ghost. And you may be saying, okay, what's wrong with that? Those are fun. Well, the heart of the issue here is that these stories have already been told. These stories are relying on the emotional currency of previous works instead of creating new emotional moments for us to get connected to. Instead of creating emotional capital of their own, they're going for lazy story writing. And combined with the sloppy writing that's present in Kenobi, it just leads to a bad show. Solo is perhaps the best example of what I'm talking about, in that Han Solo has a complete character arc in the original trilogy from rogue to hero. Now, where do you go in making a Solo movie? More rogue to less roguish? Again, his character arc was complete, which makes it very hard to create new character arcs in a prequel. And you really see this in Kenobi. You've got Darth Vader, who certainly has a completed character arc through the prequels and the original trilogy. And his relation to Obi-Wan Kenobi also feels complete in those 6 movies. But now we are entering more conversations and more information into this relationship that, in my opinion, not only doesn't necessarily make sense, but also cheapens the revelations or character arcs of the original 6 movies. Let's take a small example of this. In the final fight between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi in the new Obi-Wan Kenobi show, Darth Vader makes this kind of statement about how I killed Anakin myself. People really loved this moment, and I can understand why in isolation it was a very cool moment, but in context of Darth Vader's character arc that we already know, it feels way too early for Anakin to have this revelation. It takes away from the arc that he goes through in the original trilogy. Or even Obi-Wan defeating Vader in this decisive way. I've seen people say that it works with episode 4 because Obi-Wan now has defeated Darth Vader in a way that makes him at peace to let Darth Vader, defeat him, to let Luke get away. But I disagree. You don't think the defeat that Obi-Wan did of Anakin in movie 3 needed to be improved on? I mean, that was a dark, sad moment. And so when he sees him again in episode 4 and so much distance and so much has changed, that's the moment. We don't need one in between. Obi-Wan already defeated Anakin pretty harshly. Did we need him to defeat him again? Moving on to Leia, it's less of a character arc thing because she's so young. I don't necessarily think we need her to go through a character arc, and more of a just straight up inconsistency thing. We know what Leia does in episode 4, and sure, a lot of people have tried to explain away why she might just say, "You knew my father in the Clone Wars," but how can you explain away her reaction to his death? It's not explainable. This happened only 9 years before then. You would remember a moment like this as a 10-year-old. The other thing they did constantly in the show is try to create tension around characters getting hurt or dying, even though we knew the outcome for almost every single character in the show. If you're doing a prequel like this, you cannot try to make the tension on whether or not a character is going to die. There is no tension there. You need to find another way to create tension, and it is doable, but Disney decided not to do it. It just seems like the writers thought to me, if we have sassy little Leia in it, if we have a Obi-Wan and Darth Vader duel a bunch of times, it's gonna be cool and people are gonna love it. No one will care that it's sloppy writing. Look, and maybe I could have forgiven the stuff I've mentioned, but the sloppy writing piled on top of this fan service is just unforgivable. There are too many moments to mention, but let's just go through like the quickest laundry list. We have a villain with zero nuance, whose story I literally predicted from episode 1, and their way to get around the fact that they give their villain zero personality and zero story, well, don't worry, we'll just make her have her own show to explain it all. Because not like you would need to have a compelling villain in a closed show. This is the extended universe now. 2 people walk down a secret tunnel that a villain just discovered, yet somehow the villain who enters after gets to the front before the people who entered much sooner to capture Leia, and does somehow not pass the person who goes back through the tunnel. Having Vader say, "You should have killed me when you had the chance." Anakin, I don't exactly think that Obi-Wan was showing you mercy in this scene. I don't think he was walking away going, "Well, I let Anakin live. Good for me." And then we have Vader pull Kenobi through a fire for a long period of time, but then when the exact same fire rages up, somehow he can't force pull him through the fire anymore, and it's like, I guess he just has to get away? We'll have them shoot the fence when they could walk around it? We'll have them put a tracker in something to somehow turn it into an evil robot? And for heaven's sakes, whatever this scene was. Oh boy, I could go on. I watched the show and all I could think of is, oh boy, they didn't even try to make a story. They didn't try. They just threw in things they thought would be cool and give us cheap emotional feelings in the moment and called it good. And showing me that they're gonna release 10 more shows in the next 2 years doesn't give me a lot of confidence about where it's going. So what do I wish for the future of Star Wars to look like? Well, I find it as no surprise that the 2 things I've liked best that Disney has produced have been the things the furthest removed from our original characters and stories, which are The Mandalorian and Rogue One. Now, I know both of these properties have legit criticisms, and I agree with some of them, but in the end, I was able to enjoy them and like them, and they felt the most Star Wars to me. Because the universe of Star Wars literally has a galaxy full of stories, so why are we so obsessed with making everything about the Skywalkers? Or maybe more importantly, we just need writers who frickin' care. Now, by chance, Obi-Wan Kenobi came out at the same time as Stranger Things 4. Now, normally I would not compare these shows because they are very different in a lot of ways, but one thing became very clear to me, and that I was really struck by the difference in storytelling techniques and the effectiveness of storytelling in these two shows. The biggest thing I noticed was that after 6 episodes, or almost 6 hours of TV, I felt nothing for almost any character in Kenobi except Kenobi himself because of the previous franchises or previous emotions I had. Yet Stranger Things 4 made me root and care deeply about Enzo, who has probably like 30 minutes of screen time over a season of 8 to 9 hours of runtime. Season 1 of Stranger Things does this even better. As I started rewatching it recently, I realized how much backstory and emotional care they put into even the first 2 episodes. I was blown away by how much we know about these characters and how much personality they had in only 2 45-minute episodes. It's because Stranger Things is actually trying to tell a tight story and using storytelling techniques instead of relying on fan service to pull them through. It was a new original story, so they couldn't do it, and they didn't. I'm just praying some of the writers on these new shows actually try to write new, interesting stories and make something new and revitalize the Star Wars franchise, instead of just trying to make predictable money and expand Disney Plus's adult streaming content. And finally, as sad as it makes me feel to say this, as a huge and longtime Star Wars fan, I think I'm finally gonna put my money where my mouth is and not watch any new shows until people I actually trust tell me they are worth it and are good. I'm tired of the runarounds. Okay, except for Watiti's, because he's made a lot of stuff that I really like, and so I kind of trust him, and he came out and said that it wasn't going to be connected to any previous Star Wars story, so I'm going to give that one a chance. So I'd love to know what you thought of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. I know a lot of people loved that show, but as a longtime Star Wars fan and someone who's a fan of good storytelling, as someone who reads a lot and know what good storytelling looks like, I was extremely disappointed in this show and finally kind of put the nail in the coffin after the Book of Boba Fett and the disaster that was the sequels, that we may not be getting a lot of great Star Wars content. If you felt the same way I did, please let me know, or just talk about fan service in general, and if you like it or if you don't. I generally don't like it in almost any form unless it's very, very small, so please let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like these kind of deep dives, please like and subscribe, and if you want to see what I'm currently reading as well as other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye.